What if I told you that 2024 became the worst year for cruise ship disasters in over a decade? I've spent weeks digging through CDC inspection reports, passenger testimonials, and industry insider information to expose the absolute worst ship from each major cruise line. And trust me, some of these findings will shock you. We're talking about maggots found near poolside bars on luxury ships, complete power failures leaving thousands of passengers in the dark, and sanitation scores so low they'd make a gas station restroom look pristine. One particular luxury cruise line scored a 62 out of 100 on their CDC inspection, with violations so disturbing that passengers paid over $10,000 to experience what can only be described as floating nightmare. But that's just the beginning. Let me walk you through each cruise line's biggest embarrassment, starting with the one that might surprise you the most. Let's kick things off with Carnival Breeze, and honestly, the name couldn't be more ironic. This ship scored an 86 on a CDC inspection, which might sound decent until you realize what that actually means. The CDC found pest infestations throughout the galley areas, with cockroaches spotted near food preparation zones. But here's where it gets really disturbing. Multiple passengers reported finding bugs in their cabin bathrooms, and one family discovered what they described as mouse droppings behind their mini fridge. The ship's buffet area repeatedly failed cleanliness standards, with inspectors noting improper food temperatures and cross-contamination issues that directly led to several norovirus outbreaks during 2024. What really caught my attention was a passenger review from last March. A woman named Sarah posted photos showing brown water coming from her cabin faucet for 3 straight days, and when she complained, crew members allegedly told her it was normal and to just use bottled water for everything. The CDC report backs this up, noting inadequate water quality monitoring and failure to maintain potable water systems. But the most shocking part? Carnival continued operating this ship at full capacity while these violations were happening. One passenger described the experience as paying for a vacation and getting a floating health hazard instead. And this isn't just isolated incidents we're talking about. The pattern of neglect on Carnival Breeze spans multiple voyages and affects thousands of unsuspecting families who thought they were booking a fun cruise experience. But if you think Carnival's problems are bad, wait until you hear what happened to Royal Caribbean's flagship vessels. We're talking about Icon of the Seas, the world's largest cruise ship, and when something this massive breaks down, the chaos is absolutely unprecedented. In July 2024, Icon of the Seas experienced a complete power failure while carrying over 7,600 passengers in the middle of the Caribbean. Picture this. You're on a floating city that suddenly goes completely dark. No air conditioning in 90-degree heat, elevators trapped between floors with people inside, and toilets that won't flush across 20 decks. One passenger filmed the aftermath on TikTok, showing hundreds of people crowding the upper decks, desperately trying to get fresh air, while the ship's interior became unbearably hot. The video went viral for good reason. You can actually hear children crying in the background, while adults are arguing with crew members who had no answers. But here's what Royal Caribbean didn't want you to know. This wasn't the first time. Harmony of the Seas, another one of their massive ships, suffered a similar overnight blackout just 3 months earlier, leaving 6,000 passengers in complete darkness for over 4 hours. The real problem isn't just the power failures themselves, it's how Royal Caribbean's obsession with building bigger and bigger ships has created floating disasters waiting to happen. When you pack that many people onto one vessel, a single system failure becomes catastrophic. Industry insiders tell me that these megaships are so complex that even the engineers don't fully understand all the interconnected systems. And Royal Caribbean's response? They offered passengers a measly $50 onboard credit and acted like nothing happened. But the passengers I spoke with said they'll never cruise again after experiencing what felt like being trapped in a floating prison. Now, if Royal Caribbean has issues with their megaships, Norwegian Cruise Line has turned mechanical failures into an art form. Throughout 2024, Norwegian ships experienced what industry experts are calling an epidemic of complete power losses, and the pattern is absolutely alarming. Norwegian Dawn suffered 3 separate power outages in a single quarter, leaving passengers without air conditioning, running water, or functioning toilets for hours at a time. But what happened on Norwegian Gym in September will make your stomach turn. The ship lost all power while docked in Jamaica, and here's the kicker, the backup generators failed too. Passengers were trapped in their cabins for over 6 hours in sweltering heat with no ventilation. One elderly passenger had to be airlifted to a hospital due to heat exhaustion, and multiple families with young children reported their kids becoming violently ill from dehydration. The crew's response. They handed out warm bottled water and told passengers to be patient. A passenger named Mike recorded himself trying to get answers from the captain, and you can hear the desperation in his voice as he describes the unbearable conditions below deck. But here's what really gets me angry. Norwegian knew about these recurring power issues and continued booking passengers anyway. Internal emails leaked to cruise industry blogs show maintenance crews repeatedly warning about aging electrical systems across the Norwegian fleet. One email specifically mentions catastrophic failure risks on at least 4 Norwegian ships. Yet the company's solution was to increase sailings and pack more passengers onto these failing vessels. Norwegian's freestyle cruising apparently extends to their maintenance schedule because they're treating passenger safety like it's optional. And when you're floating in the middle of the ocean with no power, no water, and no working toilets, freestyle becomes a nightmare you can't wake up from. While Norwegian deals with power failures, Princess Cruises has a different kind of problem that's arguably worse. They're essentially running floating nursing homes and calling them cruise ships. Caribbean Princess stands out as the absolute worst offender, and the moment you step on board, you'll understand why. This ship is over 20 years old, and it shows in every creaky hallway and stained carpet. But the real issue isn't just cosmetic aging. It's how Princess has let their older ships deteriorate while focusing all their resources on newer vessels. Passengers consistently complain about Caribbean Princess having the most confusing layout of any cruise ship they've ever experienced. One reviewer described it as a floating maze designed by someone who clearly hates passengers. The dining rooms are cramped, outdated, and understaffed, leading to wait times that can stretch over 2 hours for basic meals. But what really shocked me was discovering that Princess has been using Caribbean Princess as a training ship for new crew members, meaning you're paying full price to be served by people who literally don't know what they're doing. The ship's cabins tell an even more disturbing story. Multiple passengers reported broken air conditioning units that crew members claimed were working fine, forcing families to sleep in sweltering heat. The bathrooms have plumbing issues so severe that some passengers had to use public restrooms for their entire cruise because their cabin toilets simply didn't work. One family posted photos showing water damage and what appeared to be mold growth around their cabin's porthole. And when they complained, Princess staff allegedly told them it was normal wear and tear for an older ship. Here's the thing that really bothers me. Princess charges nearly the same prices for Caribbean Princess as they do for their newer ships. But they're delivering an experience that feels more like staying in a rundown motel than enjoying a luxury cruise vacation. If you thought the previous ships were bad, MSC Seaside will make you question everything you know about cruise line standards. This ship scored a devastating 67 out of 100 on its CDC inspection, and when you dig into the specific violations, it reads like a horror movie script. The CDC found fly infestations throughout the main dining areas, with inspectors counting over 200 flies buzzing around the buffet stations during dinner service. But that's just the beginning of this nightmare. The real shocker came when inspectors discovered that MSC's dishwashing procedures were so inadequate that passengers were literally eating off dirty plates. The CDC report specifically mentions visible food residue and grease on supposedly clean dishes, and multiple passengers got food poisoning after eating from the main dining room. One passenger described finding what looked like dried pasta sauce on her clean wine glass, and when she pointed it out to the waiter, he simply wiped it with his shirt and handed it back to her. But here's where it gets absolutely disgusting. MSC Seaside's galley had what the CDC classified as a severe sanitation breakdown. Dead insects were found in food storage areas, and the ship's ice machines tested positive for dangerous bacteria levels that could cause serious illness. Multiple families reported their children becoming violently sick after drinking beverages from the ship's bars. and the ship's medical center was reportedly overwhelmed with passengers suffering from stomach problems throughout multiple sailings. What's really disturbing is how MSC tried to cover this up. When passengers started posting about the conditions on social media, MSC allegedly pressured them to delete their posts in exchange for onboard credits. One passenger told me that MSC staff confiscated her phone when she tried to photograph the fly-infested buffet area. The company's response to the CDC violations? They claimed it was due to cultural differences in cleaning standards, and that American inspectors didn't understand European hospitality practices. But there's nothing hospitable about serving food surrounded by swarms of flies. Now here's where things get really interesting, because when budget cruise lines have problems, you expect it. But when premium lines like Celebrity and Holland America fail their passengers, it hits differently because you're paying luxury prices for what turns out to be economy disasters. Celebrity Constellation proved this point in the most dramatic way possible during a Mediterranean cruise last summer, when the ship suffered a complete electrical failure off the coast of Italy. Picture paying $4,000 per person for a luxury cruise experience, only to find yourself trapped in a floating prison with no air conditioning, no lights, and worst of all, no functioning toilets for over 3 hours in the middle of a heat wave. Passengers described the ship as becoming unbearably hot and stuffy, with people desperately crowding onto the upper decks just to breathe. But here's what really infuriated passengers. Celebrity's crew seemed completely unprepared for the emergency, with conflicting announcements and staff members who clearly had no idea what was happening. Holland America's Koningsdam presents a different kind of luxury line failure that might be even more frustrating. This jump's supposed to represent Holland America's pinnacle class excellence, but passengers consistently report service so inconsistent and awkward that it feels like the crew is actively working against them. The ship's layout is confusing and impractical, with restaurants scattered randomly across multiple decks and no logical flow between venues. Multiple passengers described feeling like they needed a GPS just to find their dining room. But the real problem with these premium lines is the expectation versus reality gap. When you're paying twice as much as a Carnival cruise, you expect twice the quality, not the same problems with a fancier price tag. One passenger summed it up perfectly. I paid luxury prices to experience budget problems with a crew that acted like they were doing me a favor by taking my money. And that's exactly the attitude that makes these premium line failures so much more infuriating than problems on budget cruise lines. But now we get to the absolute winner of this nightmare competition, and I guarantee this will shock you. Hapag Lloyd's Hanseatic Inspiration scored an unbelievable 62 out of 100 on their CDC inspection, making it officially the worst scoring cruise ship of 2024. And here's the kicker. This is supposed to be an ultra-luxury expedition cruise where passengers pay over $10,000 per person for what's marketed as a premium Arctic and Antarctic experience. The CDC violations on this ship read like something from a third-world disaster zone. Inspectors found maggots crawling near the poolside bar area, with visible larvae in food storage containers that were supposed to be sealed and refrigerated. But it gets worse. Dead birds were discovered on outdoor dining decks, apparently left there for days while passengers were eating meals just feet away. The ship's water systems were so contaminated that passengers were advised not to brush their teeth with tap water, and multiple people reported getting violently ill from simply showering. One passenger paid $15,000 for what was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime Antarctic expedition, only to discover that the ship's galley was so filthy that crew members were preparing meals while flies buzzed around the food preparation areas. She described watching kitchen staff swat insects away from her dinner plate as they served it to her. Another passenger found what appeared to be mouse droppings in his luxury suite's minibar area, and when he complained, staff allegedly told him it was natural for expedition ships to have wildlife interactions. But here's what really makes this unforgivable. Hapag, Lloyd knew about these conditions and continued charging premium prices anyway. Internal reports suggest the company was aware of the sanitation problems for months before the CDC inspection, yet they kept booking passengers and collecting those massive deposits. One passenger told me that when she demanded a refund after seeing the conditions, Hapag Lloyd refused and claimed that expedition cruising involves accepting certain rustic conditions. Apparently, their definition of rustic includes maggots in your food and dead birds on your dinner deck. This is what happens when luxury cruise lines think they can charge premium prices while delivering third world conditions. So, what does all this mean for you as someone who actually wants to enjoy a cruise vacation without getting food poisoning or being trapped in a powerless floating prison? First, always check the CDC's Vessel Sanitation Program website before booking any cruise. Any ship scoring below 85 should be an immediate red flag, and anything below 75 means you should run in the opposite direction. But here's what the cruise lines don't want you to know. You can actually request to see a ship's most recent CDC inspection report, and if they refuse to provide it, that tells you everything you need to know. Ship age matters more than most people realize. Any vessel over 15 years old is going to have maintenance issues that newer ships simply don't face, and cruise lines often use their older ships as training grounds for inexperienced crew members. If you're booking a cruise on an older ship, expect problems and plan accordingly. Check recent passenger reviews from the last 6 months, not the glowing testimonials from 5 years ago when the ship was in better condition. Most importantly, travel insurance isn't just recommended for cruises like these, it's absolutely essential. Make sure your policy covers trip interruption due to mechanical failures, because when these ships break down, you could be stuck dealing with thousands of dollars in additional expenses that the cruise line won't cover. And here's a pro tip. Always pack medications, extra clothes, and essential items in your carry-on luggage, because if you end up needing to evacuate or transfer to another ship, checked luggage is often the last priority. The cruise industry is counting on passengers not doing their homework, but now you know exactly what to look for to avoid becoming another horror story. So there you have it, the absolute worst ship from each major cruise line, from Carnival's pest-infested nightmare to Lloyd's $15,000 Maggot experience. What shocked me most while researching this wasn't just how bad these conditions were, but how these cruise lines continued operating and charging full prices while knowing their ships were failing basic health and safety standards. The cruise industry is banking on passengers not knowing about CDC scores, inspection reports, or the warning signs that could save you from a vacation disaster. Before you book your next cruise, take 5 minutes to check that CDC website and read recent passenger reviews. Your future self will thank you when you're enjoying a clean, safe cruise instead of dealing with power outages, food poisoning, or worse. If this video helped you avoid a cruise nightmare, smash that subscribe button because I'm not done exposing the cruise industry's dirty secrets. Drop a comment below if you've experienced any of these problem ships yourself, or if you think I missed any cruise line disasters that deserve to be on this list. And remember, the cruise lines don't want you to know this information, so share this video with anyone planning a cruise vacation. Trust me, they'll appreciate the warning.